international conference being organized by BEEP in collaboration with UNDP and GEF is to provide a platform to exchange knowledge and experience on some of the key aspects of building energy efficiency. So we are pleased to bring together 150 building energy experts from both India and overseas to exchange knowledge and experience on some of the key aspects of building energy efficiency. They would listen to around 40 speakers that include renowned scientists and architects like Professor Thomas Stocker, Mr. Bruno Stagno, Professor Alfredo Brillenburg, Mr. Pierre Jabodiev, and renowned Indian architects and experts like Mr. Ashok Lal, Mr. Sanjay Prakash, Mr. C.N. Raghavendran, and Dr. Ajay Mathur. This three-day international conference will have 5 thematic technical sessions based on the areas of intervention under BEEP and a concluding session. The 5 technical sessions will focus on integrated design for energy-efficient buildings, energy-efficient residential buildings, the approach towards mainstreaming energy conservation building code, energy-efficient building design, and external movable shading systems, with the concluding session that will deliberate on the future of building energy efficiency in India in the context of housing for all and smart cities initiatives of the Government of India. We also have an exhibition of posters portraying the various activities undertaken in BEEP and UNDP GEF project, along with technological products developed under BEEP. Several designs of the external movable shading systems, including those of winners of the National Design Competition organized under BEEP, are also exhibited there. So do find time to visit the exhibition and gain some valuable insights. We hope that the presentations and discussions in this conference will lead to possibilities of mainstreaming energy-efficient building design, construction, and operation. We'd like to now welcome all our special guests on the dais with flowers, and I'd like to request Mr. Daniel Ziegler to please present each of them with a bouquet. Mr. B.P. Pandey, Professor Thomas Stocker, Mr. Rajpal, Mr. Yuri Afanasiev, Mr. Gilles Roduit. Thank you very much, Mr. Ziegler. Without any more delay, I'd like to request the Charge d'Affaires Embassy of Switzerland, Mr. Gilles Roduit, to please welcome all our guests and delegates.
Good evening, and thank you for your patience. Dear Special Secretary of the Ministry of Power, Mr. B.P. Pandey, Your Excellency, Mr. Yuri Afanasiev, UN Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative, dear Professor Thomas Stocker, University of Bern, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this conference. Over the next 2 days, you will be focusing on the important topic of energy efficiency in buildings. This is a topic of national importance for both countries, Switzerland and India, as we are striving to achieve our respective energy policy targets. We are glad this event will provide an opportunity for sharing experience gained under our bilateral cooperation and to also learn from experience of other countries. Last week, yesterday in fact, the Swiss people had to vote to decide whether our nuclear power plant will be shut down quickly or until 2050 according to a gradual plan proposed by the government. The population decided gradually, but 46% of the voters nevertheless expressed sympathy for a quick shutdown. The debate is going on regarding the modalities of this huge energetic transition, But one fact is certain: Switzerland will abandon nuclear energy in the coming decades, while replacing it with renewable energy sources. To achieve this ambitious goal, my country will have to continue investing in energy efficiency programs at all levels. Switzerland started working on building energy efficiency almost 40 years ago. Through consistent efforts in this direction, newly constructed buildings in Switzerland are today consuming about 1/4 of the energy which they were consuming in the late 1970s. 1/4. As we know, India's building stock is poised to grow manifolds over the coming years, in particular with its ambitious schemes such as Housing for All and 100 smart cities. In order to avoid a steep increase in energy consumption, it is urgent to further improve current practices and ensure that upcoming buildings are more energy efficient. Let me now share a few words about the Swiss presence in India and some of our collaborative activities. Switzerland and India are cooperating through an old friendship and have also been engaged in a development cooperation partnership for more than 50 years. There had always been a particular focus on environmental issues, and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, since 2008, primarily supports activities related to common interests in the area of climate change. Over the years, we have been closely partnering not only with many of the governmental institutions represented in this conference, such as the Ministry of Power, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Department of Sciences and Technology, and other governmental bodies, but also with international organizations such as UNDP, TERI, and many others. Some of the major topics Indian and Swiss experts are presently working on under our programs are energy efficiency in buildings, development of a new low-carbon cement type, promotion of renewable energy solutions for remote village electrification, and energy efficiency in small and medium enterprises in the foundry sector. Through our cooperation projects, we endeavor to transfer knowledge and expertise which was gained through climate change measures in Switzerland. We have also always laid great emphasis on skills enhancement, training, and capacity building in order to have a long-lasting effect. Our cooperation projects were able to demonstrate ways and means for achieving significant energy saving and greenhouse gas emission reductions in key sectors. It seems to have worked well in our approach to involve Indian experts in order to jointly innovate and customize the solutions to the local requirements. Ladies and gentlemen, at the Embassy of Switzerland, we walk the talk. Therefore, we strive to make the embassy's surrounding environment green and clean. Besides the integration of resource and energy efficiency in the office building of the development cooperation, a state-of-the-art solar thermal technology has been installed on the roof of the main embassy building for cooling in summer and heating in winter. Dear guests, I see enormous potential in the collaboration between our two countries. I'm happy to announce that the Ministry of Power of the Government of India and the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs have just signed the extension of the Memorandum of Understanding in order to continue our excellent collaboration on building energy efficiency for another 5 years. Once again, I welcome all of you to this conference and wish you all stimulating deliberations in the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodui. We also have with us the DG of BEE and the Special Secretary in the Ministry of Power, Mr. Bhagwati Prasad Pandey, and I request him to please say a few words.
Very good evening to all of you, friends. It gives me indeed A great pleasure to be here on the inaugural session of this 2 day workshop and conference, and all the distinguished panelists on the dais, uh, Mr. Gilles Rudui and Mr. Yuri, Dr. Professor Thomas, Mr. Daniel, and my colleague Rajpal, and all the distinguished guests here. I would like to give you a very brief background of what the government of India is doing as far as the energy efficiency programs are concerned, and then we come specifically to this partnership that has we have benefited very immensely since last 4 5 years. Our primary energy demand in India has grown dramatically from 450 million oil tons equivalent in 2000 to about 770 million tons in 2012, and it is expected to double and go up to 1500 million tons by 2030. So, and it obviously is driven by the economic growth, the GDP going up, the incomes going up, the lifestyles going up, and so we have the twin challenge of to keep our growth trajectory as high as possible, at the same time live up to our commitment of reducing our carbon intensity and reducing the carbon emissions. So broadly, the government is working on two pronged strategy. Number one is that we are placing a lot of emphasis on renewables, on hydro and solar and wind, and so that our present energy mix becomes such that we reduce our carbon intensity, which we have committed, by 2030, 30 to 35% of our intensity will go down as compared to 2005 level. And the other very important program that has been undertaken by Government of India, along with, of course, the BE and EESL, these are the two front organizations, is introducing and bringing in about energy efficiency in almost, all spheres. And building, of course, will be one of them. Broadly, we have been working in four sectors, if I can say so, categorize the efforts being done so far. Of course, the PAT, all of is for the industrial energy efficiency, and we successfully completed the PAT 1 cycle. And not only did we achieve the targeted efficiency, we exceeded it by about 30%. And we have already embarked upon the PAT 2 cycle, and bringing in three very important sectors of refinery, railways, and discoms. And building, of course, will be coming sooner than later. So that's one of the flagship program. The other, of course, is the super efficient equipment program, be it lighting. The LED has become a success story all over now, and the fans are coming next, and agricultural pumps, and so on and so forth. So that super efficient equipment is the another very important plank of our energy efficiency programs. And thirdly, the standard and labeling, which more towards the market transformation and bringing in more and more efficient technologies. And gradually, once we encourage the industry to go in for star labeling, and eventually then we mandate it, and we have mandated almost 8 or 9 equipments and sectors so far. And the third important one, of course, is the fourth, this ECBC program, the buildings program. And in buildings program, what we have done so far is that we have developed the ECBC, the code that has been developed. It has been adopted and agreed at the national level. More than 10 states have also adopted that code, because states have some flexibility. They have to fit in their own legal regimes. And but we hope that gradually almost all the states will adopt it, and a lot of effort is being done in that direction. And in this is one part, that's the regulatory part, and other one of course is, the star rating programs of buildings as well. So we are encouraging buildings, commercial buildings, to adopt to the voluntary star rating programs. And in that context, this partnership, this Indo-Swiss Building Energy Efficiency Program, BEEP as we called it, it has been, greatly helpful, and it has been instrumental in bringing out very important outcomes. And so far, the I think they'll all be here who will be presented the citations and awards as well. They have been, this partnership has, we have been able to support more than 18 large projects, which included, all kind of projects, the hospitals, the IT parks, the offices, educational campuses, vocational training institutions. So all spectrum of buildings have been there, which have benefited through this. And most importantly, the BEEP program has also been able to develop guidelines for design of energy efficient multi-story residential buildings. And today we are happy to announce that, the guideline for warm and humid climate zone shall also be, launched today. And the third very important area which we have been getting assistance from our Swiss partners, is in the area of capacity building. I think more than the figures that I have, they have gone across more than 13 cities and conducted more than 20 training and technical workshops. So that has, and reached out to more than 1,000 uh, uh, participants or stakeholders. So that's another example of how, the knowledge sharing has been achieved through this, and the capacities have been built. And as has been rightly pointed out by my previous speaker, that, the next we are looking at the smart cities that we are going in for, and the housing for all is going to be an important flagship program of Government of India. Apart from that, in India, I think we'll be hosting more than 7, 8 mega cities in futures to come. So that also gives a lot of potential for working in the area of building energy efficiencies. And therefore, not only the training manpower, the precise, the right kind of regulation, the right kind of market incentivizations, and right kind of policy mix. So that all has to come together, and knowledge, of course. So this partnership is being extended and renewed for another 4 to 5 years. I think that MOU is also going to be exchanged here today, and I'm really indeed privileged to be here amongst you, and I feel that the next 2 days deliberations are going to help us immensely, especially the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. And I again thank you for inviting me and giving me time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pandey. I'd like to now invite the UN Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative, Mr. Yuri Afanasiev, to please give the keynote address.
Special Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, it is indeed a pleasure to participate in an event like this now in Delhi. I was thinking what I'm going to say to you in this address, and frequently we fall into the trap of giving either too many numbers to people or try to preach to them. So I decided for a change not to do either, and speak about energy efficiency, which is one of my, frankly, most favorite topics, because throughout at least the part of my career where I have been in peacetime situations, this has been certainly a hallmark of UN programming in the countries that I've had the privilege to serve in. And the reason I'm saying that I'm not going to use the preaching argument, but I'm going to use the economic argument, is because we find ourselves, interestingly enough, in an incredible coincidence in time and space. Let's just think of where we are, both in India and in Asia, and even more so globally. Of course, we have just come out of the, a year ago, we've agreed globally to the SDGs, where a lot of the sustainability targets are listed. Important among them, and this is what people frequently forget, is that well-hidden goal about sustainable consumption. And this has direct relationship to the topic we're discussing today. Then, of course, we had the Paris Agreement, and countries assumed their own obligations and extended their commitments going forward. But what is more interesting is that in Asia, in the next 15 years, during the duration of this global agenda before 2030, we will construct about 70% of the infrastructure and the housing that is going to be existing in 2030, and we're going to do it in the next 15 years. So the argument I'm extending to this distinguished group of both Indian and foreign guests and experts and specialists is that the timing is incredibly propitious for Asia to start thinking in detail about how to tackle these issues of energy efficiency and energy consumption and sustainable consumption across the region. Sometimes I speak to my Indian colleagues here and they look at me and they say, look, what are you talking about, energy efficiency? Our people consume 1/10 of the energy that a poor American consumes. And I say, yes, absolutely. And that is completely correct. You are entirely right. However, the Indian middle class has doubled over the last 10 years. It will triple over the next 10 years if current projections hold about economic growth and the speed of it, both in Asia and in India. And these people are not going to want to live without air conditioning, without refrigeration, without many other amenities that they rightly so expect, but that India, frankly, as well as the rest of the world, cannot afford at the scale that it was done in other parts of the world in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s of the past century. Because we will require, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 planets to be able to create that kind of lifestyle. Now, some interesting numbers that I'm sure you all as experts know, and I'm sure they'll pop up in the conversation today and tomorrow, is that over 40% of the world energy used today is consumed by buildings, residential, industrial, commercial, and otherwise. It is projected that by the time we urbanize in 2030, or will be well on our way to urbanization, that amount could hit 60 to 70%. In Asia, the urbanization process is just taking off. In India, it is happening and will really happen in earnest in the coming 15 years. So in India, that argument stands bigger and higher than anywhere else, frankly, in the world or in Asia, because in this country, you will construct the biggest amount of housing, the biggest amount of infrastructure in the coming 15 to 20 years. But the coincidence in time that I was referring to in the beginning is such that you can avoid all the mistakes that the rest of the world has been making for decades. I think it was incredible when I was in my previous duty stations in parts of Europe and everywhere else in the world, how the transitional countries of Eastern Europe were facing the new reality of the market economy, increased cost of fuel and energy and water, rising tariffs, and frankly, the population simply could not handle that pressure on their incomes, to which some governments responded in a very intelligent way by precisely rolling out energy efficient strategies, incentives, and programs. Because frankly, when we speak about the costs of development, energy efficiency is a no regrets measure. It's the cheapest thing you can find out there to bring the highest benefit to our economy. But that's not it. That's not the end of the story. Why are we so enthusiastic about energy efficiency per se? Because Not only does it reduce consumption of energy in the country and per unit of GDP, not only does it make it easier for governments to tackle the energy crisis that many are facing and provide the energy that growing economies need. Interestingly enough, they create an incredible amount of new sectors of the economy, and recent studies indicate that 70% of all green jobs are actually created in the areas of energy efficiency. So think about that, those of you certainly from India, because we are with initiatives like this, and I know the government will take it up as seriously as it has some other initiatives in this area, and I'm certainly referring to India's success in the area of, in recent success in the area of lighting and LED lighting and rolling it out in the country, or the recent successes in solar and renewable energy and rolling it out at an industrial scale. So I'm sure the approach will be similar. But just think of it, because not only does energy efficiency help create incredible new industries dealing with insulation and new materials, which requires research, which requires innovation, which requires creation. It is also very domesticated. The insulation materials that are used in Europe are not the same that you will be using in India or in Asia. So there's plenty of creativity to use local waste and local materials produced locally that people are also culturally accustomed to, and turn them into insulation materials or building materials for energy efficient buildings. Another interesting fact is that 33 or 35% of emissions are also currently produced by buildings, and that is expected to grow to 50% as we hit the end of the SDG agenda in 2030. But 30 to 35% of that energy is completely wasted. So when I speak of no regret measures, this is real. We're not talking about a margin of efficiency of 2, 3, 4, 5%. We are talking, as our Swiss representative has just said, 25% is the energy they use in buildings that were constructed in the 70s. Today they consume 25% out of 100 when they were originally built. Isn't that remarkable? The conversion of old stock of buildings in countries, especially in the north, that have more serious climatic conditions, brings savings and benefits that are just, I mean, any business person should be investing in energy efficiency because the return on investment is simply amazing. Other industries that are created in an economy with this, as I said, is green jobs. I remember when, with my old friend who's sitting right there, Zoran Morvaj, who helped lead this effort in places like Croatia and Bosnia, and later in Tajikistan and bits and pieces in Russia. I remember how we were sitting there and looking how entire new markets are created in the labor market. For instance, within a period of years, a whole consulting industry doing energy audits of buildings was created. So young, educated people coming out of universities, engineers, electrical specialists, etc., went into the consulting business and started providing these energy audits and services. We then discovered that the building industry, that was in a slump at that time because the market wasn't terribly good and the economy was not doing too well. Suddenly there was a boom in the construction industry. Initially, they were importing materials and insulation from somewhere else. But the people who had to fit those materials into buildings, as well as panels on top of those roofs, they didn't exist before these initiatives were created. So what I'm trying to say is that energy efficiency is not just about buildings. It's not just about reducing the carbon footprint. It's not just about reducing our energy consumption. It has domino and trickle effects that at the scale of India or other big countries in Asia will have tremendous economic effects, both on the saving side of the dashboard and also in the employment and new industry creation side of the dashboard. Let me just say a couple of things that, the UN frequently, what the benefit that it brings to countries where we serve is the ability to share with our counterparts in government, in this case in India, some of the experiences that other countries went through. And I think in that sense, the time is so propitious because India and other countries here in Asia can benefit from this tremendous explosion, not only of experience that in the past 20 years, entire regions of the world went through and succeeded in reducing their consumption of electricity in buildings. But also the technology today makes it entirely possible and probable for things like passive buildings to become a reality and a norm in our economy. Now, India is a huge country, so obviously we're not talking about only one model, and I think the Secretary was just referring to 5, I think, climatic zones, and one new building code will be rolled out today, if I'm not mistaken. But, and so India needs various typologies and methodologies of dealing with this problem. But my point is that the experience is out there. Tropical or non-tropical, cold or hot, dry or wet, the experience exists there, out there in the world in various countries, and the technologies have been developed and are available today. And if manufactured in India, the cost can be brought down in a relatively short period of time to such an extent that a passive building in India, I can say in 10 years or in 7 years, will cost maybe a couple of percentage points more than a regular building constructed today. I'm absolutely convinced of it, having seen what you've done with the deployment of the LED lights and what you've done in other things where the market the size of India just has the propensity to reduce cost when the manufacturing comes up and the numbers increase geometrically. So I think the point of my introductory remarks today are that the timing is right, the place is right. The government, I think, is clearly understanding that this is one of the priorities, how it can meet not only its global obligations, but also meet its internal targets in providing enough energy for the country to sustain its fast-paced development, which hopefully will continue over the next decade or two. And we are here today gathered with experts from all over the world who could share this valuable experience with us and tell us in India and elsewhere in Asia where to look for inspirational experience, where to get contacts with the business community that can bring some of these investments and technology and knowledge and intellectual property to Asia and to India, and start doing this as quickly as we can, because the migration in Asia to cities, and especially in India, which probably is going to exceed 250, possibly reach 300 million people in the coming 15, 20 years, will require, Secretary, I don't know, 50, 60, 80, 100 million housing units to be constructed just in the residential sector and just in the social, affordable residential sector. So missing these opportunities, I think, for India would be a crime, and that's why I'm so glad that the organizers and our Indian hosts and the Swiss government and we in the United Nations have helped bring this gathering together so you all can share and help us find the right way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Afanasiev. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are delighted to have with us the renowned climate scientist, head of the Department of Climate and Environmental Physics at the University of Bern, Dr. Thomas Stocker, and he will speak to us now on climate change, what's required for the 2 degrees Celsius target.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Special Secretary, Ambassador, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to address you tonight at this conference about climate change. Probably the biggest motivator, apart from the economic arguments, and I will come to that towards the end of my presentation as well, sort of a convergence. The biggest argument to really get things going. What concerns us at the moment is the question, what is required for the 2-degree target? There's essentially 3 points that are required: clear targets and firm commitments, a sense of continuous urgency, and none less than the fourth industrial revolution. And I will go through these three requirements to achieve the 2-degree target set forth in the Paris Agreement recently, point by point. But before I do that, let's remember what is the basis of our actions. The basis is Article 2 of the United Framework Convention on Climate Change that says the ultimate objective is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous interference with climate system. Now, this convention has been in force since 1994, and it took quite a while until the policymakers and the countries in consensus came down with a number, what that actually means. Well, what does it mean? It's not only stabilizing the climate at a specific point, but we have to do so in a way to address and respect three important areas. First of all, we need to allow ecosystems to adapt naturally to the climate change. We also need to ensure that food production is not threatened. And finally, we need to enable economic development. So you see the framework in which this stabilization of greenhouse gas concentrations has to proceed. And in fact, this is a formidable problem. And as the Conference of the Parties have multiple times confirmed, this is one of the greatest challenges of humankind. Well, we are living in historic times, not only on the bad side, that, for example, we have crossed now the concentration of 400 ppm in carbon dioxide, and 2016 will be the first year that these concentrations will no longer go down to 300, to the 3 in the 3 digits. On the better side, the historical agreement of Paris has been approved in consensus. It contains 3 important points. The first one, holding the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius pre-industrial levels. This is taking into account the special difficulties low-lying countries, islands, and other regions of the world, in particular also in India, are faced with when sea levels are rising. And finally, how do we do that? We do that by achieving a balance between atmospheric anthropogenic emissions by sources and removals by sinks of greenhouse gases in the second half of the century. Well, this is a rather contorted expression of saying emissions have to go down to 0. We need to develop a sense of continuous urgency, because the science, and that is probably the most important result of the 5th assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is enshrined in this figure that we have passed in the Working Group 1 contribution after an entire day and an entire night of negotiations until finally consensus was achieved to have this figure in our summary for policymakers. It says in a nutshell that all carbon dioxide emissions since Industrial Revolution are directly and linearly linked with the global mean temperatures. Strong and robust scientific result that has an immense political relevance. Let's now look what that means for the present day discussion. If there is a tight relationship between the warming and all carbon dioxide ever produced and emitted into the atmosphere, Then, of course, if somebody agrees on a temperature target or on a temperature limit, then you automatically, by scientific argument and now consensus of 195 countries, you also limit that total budget of carbon, which is estimated at 790 billion tons of carbon. Since the Industrial Revolution up to the year 2015, the emissions have amounted to about 595 billion tons of carbon, which by simple subtraction inform us that about 195 billion tons are left. Compare that with the global annual mean emissions of about 11 billion tons of carbon. You can easily calculate that at current emissions, we will have exhausted that carbon dioxide budget by about 2035. And therefore, in explicit terms, under current day emissions, the 2-degree target will be lost by that time. So it's really urgent. And that's the way how the scientists have expressed their urgency in the last IPCC assessment. So what is needed then? It's this third ingredient, which is no less than the fourth industrial revolution. Something like this: human ingenuity. We need this industrial revolution after the mechanization, that's the first one, the electrification, second one, and digitalization, the third one. Some of my colleagues talk about the Internet of Things as the fourth industrial revolution. I am convinced we should be a little bit more ambitious, because our smartphones already identify one another and try to connect to one another. So that's already happening, and happening automatically. More ambitious is transforming our world into an energy supplier of the renewable kind. That's how tomorrow will look like, and that is required for decarbonization, which I believe will be the fourth industrial revolution. Now, in terms of the building sector, it's perhaps less known that the building sector, among the various emitters of carbon dioxide, such as the transportation sector, industry, and energy supply, is really a large emitter, and it's becoming the largest emitter by the end of the 21st century, according to the baseline scenario that was published in the last IPCC assessment by Working Group 3. That buildings not only are projected to become huge emitters, at the same time, this is a message of fantastic potentials, potentials to contribute truly to the decarbonization that all countries, in fact, have agreed to go on that path. And the nice thing about it is that buildings are used by everybody, anywhere on this planet. So everybody can contribute if we do it smartly. Just one more remark on the building sector. The building sector essentially has two ways how to emit carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. One is the direct way, in which you use carbon dioxide to build a building, to make construction, to use cement, to produce the building. But once the building is there, once you have made your investment, the building is emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. That's the so-called indirect carbon dioxide emission. And you see here in this central figure that the potential to reduce the indirect emission is the largest among all the sectors. That's basically going vertically down along the y-axis of this diagram to arrive at the situation where buildings essentially emit the carbon dioxide that is required to build the building, And then the indirect emissions that are produced by the electricity use, the use of the building, those can be or are projected to come down under a 2 degree scenario, almost to zero, as indicated by the circle. So in closing, I want to open up the perspective even further, not only to the fourth industrial revolution that I termed the decarbonization. That's basically dealing with the climate change problem, but we've heard about the 17 sustainable development goals, and therefore I propose a new term here that should be our all goal, and that is sustainabilization. You won't find a lot of hints on Google or hits on Google if you Google that word, but that word should become the goal in order to address not only the climate problem, but the different problems that were put into evidence by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. A final thought. An industrial revolution seems to be a huge task, a great ambition for humankind, but there also is hope in this message, and that's why I like the term industrial revolution. We've already experienced 3 industrial revolutions that I mentioned, and if you look carefully at these 3 industrial revolutions that we've experienced already, mechanization, electrification, and digitalization, each of them actually resulted in smarter products. They also created new jobs and new professions. They overall created a better life quality, and not the least, they created new values. So far, I have no indication that makes me believe that decarbonization or sustainabilization will not create these 4 points as well. That's a message of hope, and I hope for motivation to really get going here, because it is urgent. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dr. Stocker. Do you mind taking on a few questions? Okay. So Dr. Stocker has agreed to answer a few questions, if there are any from the audience. If you could raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you, and then you can ask your question of Dr. Stocker.
The economic questions I will then deflect to the experts. Thank you very much. Over there.
If you could just introduce yourself, sir, and please rise. Yeah, thank you.
I'm an architect, Kapil Chaudhary, and my question is, how do we operationalize from this sense of urgency in the building industry sector and connect it with the reality of where we are? What do you see as the pathways there?
Well, thank you very much for that key question. I think it all lies with education. So in fact, that knowledge that we now all share needs to be transmitted to the education institutions, the colleges, the schools of architecture. And I think also there should be a movement that brings the architects closer together with the engineers. Because when it comes to designing a great building, we're all very happy with a great design, but if the engineer has not sat down together with the architect at an early stage and talked about numbers, talked about building efficiency, then I think the investment becomes much more expensive at a later stage. So I think education, the new generation of architects, of engineers need to know about these things, need to know about the numbers, and that I think can continue and perpetuate this sense of urgency. And of course, the building regulations, very important element in this entire enterprise.
I'm Ashok Lal, practicing architect here in Delhi. Would you like to elaborate, Dr. Stocker, on new values of sustainability, what is it? Sustainabilization, as against the run of the earlier values that followed from each of the earlier revolutions?
Well, thank you very much. New values, of course, are associated with, for example, the respect of energy cycles and material cycles. In our Western society, we are using precious materials, precious resources, as if these resources have an endless life, as if these resources are there without any limits. And I think a new value must become rather fast the recognition that these resources are finite, which provides us with an urge to devise processes that allow us to recycle some of the most precious materials, to be smarter about our technology, even smarter, but I think in some very basic sense we have not established that smart behavior. We're really assuming that these resources are endless, and that will not really solve the problem. So a new value would be that, for example, you become aware of, as a consumer, what it means if you buy a product, what it means if you invest in a product, what it means if you build a building. And based on that, plus your new knowledge, it will provide you with better decisions.
My name is V. Suresh, former CMD Hutke. It's very nice to hear the time is running out. Do we adopt a strategy by which a good to do effort, which a few architects, few builders, few engineers are doing in a few buildings with islands of excellence, or it should be a must do thing that everybody has to do, or going from a recommendatory nature to a mandatory status, but stricter enforcement of all the new buildings coming? What do you think is that? Because I do find Germany is taking a lot of effort for mandatory status. Switzerland is taking for mandatory status. Where do you think we should pitch for India?
Well, just to make a general example, I'm not a big believer in voluntary measures, and I give you just a very trivial example. A voluntary speed limit on a highway doesn't work. So we need some limits within which we can develop some rules of the game where everybody has to abide with. Now, the problem is that we first have to demonstrate that technological such rules can be satisfied. And that's where these early efforts come in, to really demonstrate that a certain building standard can be satisfied. Once that is demonstrated technologically, I very much favor a regulatory framework. A regulatory framework also that can adjust to the needs. In other words, if technology proceeds, if ambition gets higher, you adjust your building regulation, because you don't want to be stuck with the building regulation that is based on 2015's technology and knowledge if you are in the year 2045, where you have better products, better processes. You want to mainstream that, and I think for mainstreaming regulations, sensible regulations are the way to go.
Yeah, I'm here, doctor, in front of you.
Oh, over there.
Akanksha Chaure, and a renewable energy promoter come practitioner for the past almost 28, 29 years. The three revolutions that you spoke about, they became revolutions because they touched the common man. How do you think the fourth proposed revolution of decarbonization will touch the common man?
That's a tremendously good point, and you hit it really home. I think, again, in a combination of producing products that are recognized to be smarter, to be better, to be more attractive, to perhaps even give you a sense of status if you have implemented them, a sense of advantage if you have built your building in a smart way, if your building is, for example, a small power plant. And I think even in my country, you can build buildings, and there have been a few buildings that are a net energy producer in the course of a year. So if you all of a sudden, through your smart decisions, are an owner of a power plant, of course a renewable power plant, I think that can really hit home. And by example, I think multiplication can happen. And if it does, it can happen very fast. We know the example of the mobile phone. Nobody would have predicted how fast the mobile phone would actually come to almost every inhabitant of that planet.
Hello, my name is Seli. I am former chairman of NSIC and formerly executive director, Building Materials Technology Promotion Council. My question to you, sir, is in this entire game of decarbonization and state sustainabilization, what is your advice on waste management, waste recycling, and waste utilization?
Well, first of all, decarbonization is not a game. It's actually extreme. It's the only chance we have if we really want to limit climate change. There is no other way than to get rid of fossil fuels, to be quite blunt. Now, mismanagement of resources, misallocation of funds, misprocessing of recycling, etc., if I've understood you correctly acoustically, is a big problem. I think we have a big problem also, for example, in our spheres of the world with the production of food that is not used. There's a large fraction of food that never sees a stomach of anybody. And so I think in many areas we have to become much more aware of how we do things from the beginning of the production to the end where a product is consumed. For example, if you look at a complex product such as a car, I think the recycling of materials of a car or of an engine or of a smartphone should be already built in by design. So if you disassemble it, if somebody throws it away, that gadget still has a value, and the value is evident because you can extract, don't ask me why, but there are many clever engineers around, and millions of young engineers who want to apply their brains to some reasonable problem, that you can design such products in a way that they will enter the recycling cycle in a smart way where we can bring back a lot of that material and reuse it.
Your question, sir.
Yeah, hi, I'm Satish Kumar. I'm Executive Council for Alliance for Energy Efficient Economy. And I just am quoting Michael Pollan. He's a New York Times columnist. And on food habits and how we should do, he said that eat food, mostly plants, and not so much. And he says that if you follow these 7 words, then you can really, and he said, eat food, not food like consumables, and eat food what your grandma can relate to. So I'm just thinking that we talk about a lot of concepts, a lot of knowledge, research, policies, and other things. But when we are really going and trying to do some work in building energy efficiency arena, to contractors, to developers, a lot of like the skepticism is that we have to take care of hundreds of things. Can you not simplify things for us? What is the simplification mantra for the building community? And I think it's a very tough thing to react to, because I think buildings have become very, very complex. And my sense is that just like in the food industry, instead of nutrition, nutritionism kind of like flowered, and a lot of economic power and companies are behind promoting that. I see some of that happening in the building sector as well. And so what is the source like where you can really simplify things for people who are saying that, look, things are very complex, and even to do really simple things, I don't know what is like good information, what is good knowledge. So is the answer research? Is the answer regulation? I'm still confused, like what should be the path forward? So your thoughts on that?
Well, first I would respond, there is not a simple solution to that complex problem, but of course we would like to communicate in simple terms, and that's what I've really tried to do also in the science sector, where we bring the results to the policymakers and the public in a way that is understandable. So reducing carbon dioxide and seeing that intimate relationship between the total amount of carbon and the warming is one of the examples how we try to simplify rather complex things and processes in the Earth system. Now, for the building sector, as much as with any other sectors, we need communicators, people like you who have implemented such energy efficiency measures in their building, in their planning. Talk about it, go out, demonstrate that it's actually of use and it's useful, and not only at the beginning where perhaps a builder invests a lot of money and then goes away, but in the entire lifetime of a building. That's, in my understanding, really the issue here, that you take a lifetime perspective of a building, and then energy efficiency is going to be one of the most important aspects, apart from constructing high quality and durability.
Just behind you, sir.
I'm Sachin Bandukwala from Banduk Smith Studio. I'm an architect. I wish we were talking about this urgency 15 years ago, because
we have.
No, I'm coming to the point. What I feel is that maybe now if you have to achieve this target in next 15 years, probably we have to rely on a lot of technologies which are not developed in each and every part of the world, but in certain centers, and we'll have to kind of rely on that distribution. And I'm just wondering, what is the role of localization in the context of decarbonization and
Absolutely central. Didn't I just mention that every house could become a power plant? That's really decentralization, and that's going to be a very important element of the decarbonization. But as much as that is important, it is also important to develop and invent new products, smarter products, recyclable products. We just talked about it. And so it's a combination of decentralization and innovation, big scale innovation, and India and other countries here have a special task to really help that innovation as well. As much as it's innovation, it's also an opportunity for each and every country. In Switzerland, when I talk about decarbonization, I usually mention that this is one of the only areas where Switzerland could become, again, a leader in something. And who, if not Switzerland, who usually ranks very high in the innovation indices, should not contribute to that decarbonization. So it's really an opportunity out there, and there is no limit for smart ideas. Maybe we should open up. I'm monopolizing here. This
okay, that could be the
Q&A.
last question then, please.
Thank you. I'm Isaac Emmanuel from Covestro. That's a new name for Bayer Material Science, and also leading an organization called the India Insulation Forum. Now, in terms of climate policy, would you name the top 3 countries in the world which can be good examples? It's just not policy alone, but the implementation of it also. Thank you.
The three best examples. It's always hard to really point fingers at countries or individuals, for that matter. Certainly in Europe, and there I know the situation best, Denmark is a very good example, which has taken on very early measures to limit, not really limit, but to put the price on private automobiles. That's a very good example, and today Denmark has an extremely strong renewable individual transport, and another word for that is bicycles. So they have a high number of bicycles relative to the rest of the transport. The second example is Norway. Although an oil-producing country, they have used some of their fortune to really accelerate decarbonization. So Norway has the highest implementation or selling rate of electrical cars. Now, of course, that's only half of the story. And as long as you don't produce the electricity by which you drive your electric car in a renewable sense or using renewable energies, then you haven't really completed your mission. But that's coming on with the hydropower they have available. So these are two examples that really stand out. There are other examples where perhaps it's less evident. If you look at Brazil, for example, the mere fact that they have reduced for a while, now I'm not sure whether that is the end of the word, deforestation. This is a huge contribution to reducing carbon dioxide emission, because every deforested area will actually create a lot of carbon dioxide emissions. If you can avoid that, that's already a great contribution.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stocker. We have one last question now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am an architect. My name is Bruno Staño, and I came from Costa Rica. I am very proud to say that Costa Rica produced 98% of the power with renewable resources.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's the third country I should have mentioned.
Yes, sometimes this year we have had 300 days without production of electricity with other means. The other question, the other issue I would like to mention is that my country has 52% of the land of woods, forest, product of the reforestation of the land. It was 32% and now is 52%. And the last scope of the country is to become a neutral carbon country in 2021. It's very difficult, but we are trying to get it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singer. Any response to that, Dr. Stocker?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
Congratulations again. I mean, this is really an example to follow. Although I still, in my last visit to Costa Rica, I've seen the odd car still running on petrol.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stocker. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we are joined by the Honourable Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, and we'd like to welcome him now by requesting Daniel Zergerer to please present flowers to the Minister. So we move on now to the award ceremony, and I'd like to request the Honourable Minister of State with independent charge for power, coal, new and renewable energy and mines, Mr. Piyush Goyal, to please present these. So if I could request you to please step forward, sir, so that our award winners could move up and take the award. We begin with building projects with energy efficient design through technical support received under BEEP. We have a total of 9 awards. One of the main tasks under BEEP was to work with builders and provide them technical assistance to design energy efficient buildings. Through a public call for selection of projects to avail this technical assistance, BEEP provided technical assistance by conducting design workshops called Integrated Design Charrettes to 15 commercial and 3 residential building projects. Today, Design Charrettes plaques will be awarded to 3 projects that have availed technical assistance under BEEP, and after incorporation of the energy efficiency features in their design, the buildings are now under construction. So the first is Jupiter Hospital, Pune, a 300-bed multi-specialty hospital project in Baner, in Pune. The project developer is Jupiter Lifeline Hospitals. To receive the award, we have Mr. Nilesh Shinde. The India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management, New Delhi, is a research, training and extension for Participatory Democracy and Election Management Institute under the Election Commission of India. Currently functioning from the Nirvachan Sadan, the new campus is being constructed at Sector 13 Dwarka, and the agency building this is Central Public Works Department, and we have Mr. Vivek Khare from the Election Commission to receive the award. Our third award winner is the World Trade Center Gift City, Gandhinagar. This is a mixed-use development project that is a part of the Domestic Finance Center of Gift City. The project developer is Viridian Red, and to receive the award, we have Mr. Anil Minj and Ms. Alankrita Soni. We now have the Design Charrette certificates to be awarded to 5 projects. The certificates will be awarded to building projects that have availed the technical assistance under BEEP and have agreed to incorporate energy efficiency features. Symbiosis University of Applied Sciences, Indore. This university, being developed by Symbiosis, offers short-term skill-based courses as well as degree programs in high-growth sectors of automobile, construction, manufacturing, retail, IT, banking, and finance. The award will be received by Mr. Jitendra Vyas. Avantika University, Ujjain. It has been planned as India's first design-centered university, blending an academic model for design, architecture, and technology disciplines. The project developer is the Maharashtra Academy of Engineering and Education Research, Pune, which is a well-known educational trust, including their flagship institute, Maharashtra Institute of Technology in Pune. We have Dr. Prashil Suryavanshi to receive the award. DB Pride Indore is an upcoming housing project in Indore developed by DB Infrastructures Private Limited, which is the real estate and infrastructure business arm of the Indian media group, Dainik Bhaskar. Mr. Praveen Srivastav will collect the award. P17 residential project, Mahindra World City, Chennai, is an upcoming housing project in the Mahindra World City, Chennai, which is India's first operational special economic zone. The project developer is Mahindra Life Space Developers, and the award will be received by Mr. Manish Dubey and Ms. Janavi Parab. The 5th winner, Smart Ghar 3, Rajkot, an affordable housing project under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, untenable slum redevelopment. The project is being developed by Rajkot Municipal Corporation, and we have the Commissioner Rajkot, Mr. Vanchanidhi Pani, to please receive the award. We now have the qualified laboratories under technical assistance provided by BEEP to develop building material testing infrastructure, being given their certificates. We have a total of 3 awards. Building insulation materials play an important role in the construction of the energy efficient buildings, and BEEP supported a program for the capacity building of selected labs in India to enhance testing of building insulation materials and products. Under the inter-lab comparison testing, 3 Indian labs have qualified, and they are the Center for Advanced Research in Building Science and Energy, CARPSE, at CEPT University, Ahmedabad. The award being received by Professor Rajan Raval. Isoloid Engineering Technologies Limited, Baddi, receives the certificate, and we have Mr. Mohit Khanna to collect it. Spectro-Analytical Labs Limited, New Delhi, have also qualified, and we have Mr. Sushant Gupta to receive the certificate. Now the awards for the National Design Competition for External Movable Shading Systems. As many of you may be aware, these external movable shading systems can significantly help in reducing heat gains in a building, yet despite the potential, there are very few examples and applications of the external movable shading systems in India. BEEP organized a design competition to promote innovative indigenous concepts and solutions for the external movable shading systems. The competition had 2 categories, residential buildings and commercial buildings. We received 31 entries in the first stage. After a 2-stage evaluation process, 3 residential designs and 2 commercial designs were finally selected for the prototype testing. So the winners are, in the residential building category, Fabric Twist by Anto Glorin and Payal Chaudhary. And we have Mr. Anto Glorin here to collect the certificate. The first runner-up in the residential is One Fold by Banduk Smith Studio. To receive the certificate, we have Mr. Sachin Bandukwala. Second runner-up in residential is Touch Me Not by Jurong Consultants Private Limited, and we have Dr. Uma Maheshwaran to receive the certificate. In the commercial building category, the winner is Zula by Keyur Zaveri, and we have Mr. Zaveri here to collect the award. First runner-up in commercial is Vertical Rigid Louver System by Facade Applications for Conservation of Energy. And to receive the certificate, we have Ms. Ismat Khambata. So congratulations to all the winners. We now have the exchange of MOUs that have been signed for the next 5 years, based on the excellent results of the Indo-Swiss collaboration. The 2 governments have jointly decided to continue collaborating on this important matter for another 5 years. And we have Mr. Rajpal, the Economic Advisor, Ministry of Power, and Mr. Guillet Rodui, Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of Switzerland, to please exchange the MOU folders in the presence of the Honorable Minister. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We now have some design guidelines that we would like our chief guest to please unveil. If I could request the Honorable Minister to please unveil the design guidelines. The aim of this is to provide comprehensive information on how to design energy-efficient multi-story residential buildings. The guidelines take into account different climatic conditions prevailing in India. There are 15 main recommendations that cover building, massing, and spatial configuration to reduce solar radiation exposure on the building surface, strategies to reduce cooling energy and improve thermal comfort, wall finishes, and natural ventilation. The recommendations also include methods to reduce electricity consumption in space cooling appliances and in common services such as lighting, lifts, and water pumping. Thank you, sir. We are now very keen to hear from the Honorable Minister of State for Power, Coal, New and Renewable Energy and Mines, Mr. Piyush Goyal.
With the best of building designs, I can't get my throat all right today. Very distinguished guests on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. Fortunately for all of you, I've totally lost my voice giving speeches all over the country on demonetization. So I think in any case, Dr. Stodker has addressed a lot of the issues that concern this industry more and more relevant to the subject. But I'm delighted that Switzerland and India have chosen to partner with each other. 5 years have gone by, but I do believe a lot of learnings have come in the process. And I believe that there's a lot more that can be done given the changing thinking all over the world. Even in India, we have accepted the challenge of climate change with a different perspective in the last couple of years. And now with the signing of the Paris Agreement, with that being ratified and becoming international law, since more than 55% of the world has engaged or ratified the agreement, I think it's the best time to seriously look at each of the elements of energy consumption. And for a country like India, our lighting, our domestic and commercial building energy needs are indeed disproportionately high compared to probably other parts of the world. More so because we still have a long way to go before the income levels of people increase. And in this situation, basic usage of electricity for lighting and fans, increasingly for refrigerators and coolers, has become quite a large chunk of the energy that we consume in the country. And for us to adopt modern building codes is also more relevant because in a rapidly transforming and expanding economy, we're going to do a lot of building construction in the next few years. In fact, some estimates suggest that if one was to take the total number of buildings that will be existing in India in 2030, we probably haven't built even 1/3 of those so far. So there's going to be at least a 200% expansion in the amount of buildings that we have in India in the next 15 years. And in this situation, we have a possibility of doing it right ab initio. Usually such programs, such energy efficiency programs involve a lot of changeovers. So you have to retrofit existing buildings, you have to redesign a lot of what has already been done. But we in India now have an opportunity to start afresh, start smart, and be ahead of the curve faster than possibly any other country, because with our affordable housing for all program by 2022, with the rapidly increasing industrial landscape or manufacturing base that we are trying to encourage, I think we have a great opportunity to bring in the best of technologies and the best of ideas from around the world and implement it as we set up such large numbers of buildings in India. But I'd like to just flag off a word of caution. Very often, what is relevant in Switzerland or Europe or the United States may not necessarily be relevant or may not fit into the budgets that we are able to afford in India. Capital in India is scarce and it's expensive. In parts of the world like Europe or America, you have significantly larger amounts of capital at very low cost, often at negative interest rates, as we hear Switzerland is in today, or Japan is grappling with today. You have a high cost of labor. We have a very significantly more competitive cost of labor in India. In this situation, it's very essential that policymakers and designers all work to indigenize solutions, to make solutions which are more relevant to the Indian context, to the Indian economics of building construction. I was just finalizing 2 buildings in Delhi, one for the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and one for my political party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, its national headquarters. In both cases, we have tried to go to a net zero or energy efficient building where we generate as much electricity as we produce. We're trying to create designs where we exploit the maximum sunshine for natural lighting, yet not allowing it to become inefficient in terms of its air conditioning load. We're trying to see different elements of the building design to see how ventilation can help supplement air conditioning, both for the fresh air and for more energy efficiency. But while doing this, in both buildings, we found that the same solutions didn't work. So in the government building, the MNRE building, there's going to be a larger number of people who would be stationed in each office and would work 9 to 5 or whatever time I let them go in the night. But in my political party headquarters, there would be large areas which would not be used very frequently. My own office there, for instance. With my other duties, I may not be going to that office more than maybe once a week for a few hours. But other times it would remain empty. But it would have a large number of footfalls of visitors, which would not be there in the Renewable Energy Ministry building. So we have to factor in large number of people coming into the building, therefore a large amount of people in the building at all times, but concentrated in particular areas, not uniformly around the building. Now I'm just saying this out of a recent experience so that both the policymakers and designers bear in mind that don't come up with a one-size-fits-all regulation or design. One will have to sit with clients and work out in great detail the actual dimensions and actual needs of the customer. And you as policymakers should not be mandating impractical things, which will actually add to cost unnecessarily. So finally, instead of probably the most efficient air conditioning, which would be a central chilling plant or something like that, we found that an intermediate solution between window split air conditioners and a totally central unit An intermediate solution turned out to be the most cost effective. We looked at the life cycle costs, but then there's also a huge interest cost to be factored in for whatever money is invested in the BJP, in the party office. But in the Renewable Energy Ministry, possibly a central air conditioning unit may work. So every building will have its own dynamics. There'll often be a need to design a building in a certain fashion. You may not always be able to probably have the highest level of energy efficiency in every building. But we should not let our policy or our designing be like an ostrich or just stand without reason on certain principles or certain regulation without its relevance to the particular building or particular client and his requirement being factored in. I do hope this partnership under this MOU will look at these kind of very typical Indian centric issues when you engage with each other, how we can use domestically produced raw materials in different parts of the country more efficiently. Can we dovetail traditional designs? And I'm given to understand that Indian architecture of yore, of the good old days, was probably far more advanced than what we are doing today in terms of the way the stupas were designed or the way the temples were designed, the way the ventilation in the temples or the sunlight in the temples was let in. Temples, mosques, churches, whatever, all places of religion, all places of architecture that we have in the country. And I'm sure we can learn a lot if one was to go back, go into history, go into tradition. After all, in some sense, architecture is also an expression of values. And each country has its own values, its own value systems, its own typically indigenous requirements. Of course, one cannot ignore the deep challenge of climate change. We are very conscious in this country. We would like to participate in this global effort to fight the problems of climate change. But at the same time, we believe that the West will also have to come forth and fulfill its commitments towards technology sharing, towards low-cost finance. And in a way, that's the common but differentiated responsibility that we often talk of, particularly when countries like India or African countries or the less developed countries in any case are not responsible for this problem in the first place. This problem has emanated largely from the Western, more developed world. And I do believe it's incumbent on them to participate in this global effort far more proactively and not just shirk away its responsibilities. We yet have to see now, given the changing political dimensions in different parts of the world, how this story pans out going forward. So my own sense is that irrespective of political changes, climate change will have center stage in the global political and economic discourse. And I do hope to receive the continued support and continue to engage with Switzerland and other countries to further improve our Indian building design codes, our plans going forward in the future. And this spirit of partnership, and Switzerland has always been a valuable partner of India, save and except for the unsavory part, which is also a lot in the news and discussed these days. But I do hope after the recent agreement that the Swiss government and the Indian government have entered into, hopefully that story will be a story of the past and we can work together as partners in a new and evolving world, as partners in a clean world, clean in every sense of the word, and work together to make this a better planet to live in. Thank you very much, and my apologies for this bad throat. But the good news is that I haven't taken too much time for you then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goel, sir. In conclusion, I'd like to request Mr. Daniel Zigerer, the Director of Cooperation and the Counselor at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, to please give the vote of thanks.
Dear dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, it is my, my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion on behalf of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation and on behalf of the Swiss Embassy. I extend a very heartfelt gratitude to all speakers for gracing the occasion and sharing your insights with us today. I certainly like to thank the Honorable Minister for spending some time with us today. Minister Goyal, despite the challenge with your voice, I think we can say that we have heard your message loud and clearly. We have would like to thank you also in particular for sharing your personal experience with these two buildings that you have been involved in. That was he spoke with a lot of to take this issue forward and to make India's buildings in the future one of the most energy top performers. But let me also express my gratitude to the Special Secretary who is with us here today, and with the Economic Advisor, Mr. Rajpal, who have joined us for this occasion. We thank you for your guidance and support in the organization of this of the Bureau of Energy, of the Government of India in general, that are planned in the future in this area. Of course, we look forward to continue our close collaboration under the Memorandum of Understanding, cooperation with MOP and with BE. And I think one thing, if I may say this in response to the Minister's address, that we're quite proud of is that what we actually tried to develop under this project are not the high-tech solutions that are difficult to be financed in the Indian context. I think for many of the awards that you have given out when you talk to those people who have participated in these designs, they will tell you that the kind of solutions that were developed, they have actually not led to much more upfront investment in costs. So it's really solutions that were developed that work in the Indian context, and we hope in the next phase we can really take it to scale and roll it out on a much larger level. My vote of thanks also goes to Mr. Yuri Afasaniev for not having fallen into the trap of preaching to us, but nevertheless having given a very passionate speech about the economic opportunities that are also involved in this transition that is before us. Then, of course, Professor Stocker, thanks to you also for having us given the context of the larger climate challenge that we are facing, and for also drawing our attention to the real industrial revolution that we need to embark upon in order to bring about this transformation that is needed. My thanks also goes to my colleague, Mr. Gilles Rodwy, Chargé d'Affaires at the Embassy of Switzerland, for shedding some light on the Swiss energy policy priorities, and for also being part with us today on this important milestone of Indo-Swiss cooperation. But last but not least, my thank goes to the whole BEEP project implementation team, under the leadership of Dr. Samir Maitel and Pierre Chavoyedov. They have really laid the groundwork for why it's possible to have this conference after 5 years today. The teams have been working very hard, and without your vision, professionalism, and dedication, we would not be at this stage today. So thank you for the very hard work that you and your team and all the experts involved have put in over the last 5 years. Of course, there are more people that that would deserve to be thanked, but I think I need to stop here. It would take too much time to thank everyone personally. So therefore, my last thanks for tonight goes to all who have really been associated with the organization of this event, of this conference, and everyone who has made time for being with us today. It took a little patience, but thank you very much for staying with us. I hope it was worthwhile, and I very much look forward to fruitful exchanges over the next 2 days on the subject matter and to stimulating discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and to the Honourable Minister who's come. And if I could request the Minister to please join us in just having a quick look at the exhibition of posters that has been put up just outside this hall, and we will have the doors opened out here as well as the other side for you to be able to go across and have a look at the exhibition that has been mounted. Ladies and gentlemen, then you may please join us for dinner after you've seen the exhibition. Thank you very much. Would you like to see the exhibition, sir? Okay, okay.
Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, please join us outside now for the exhibition, and then you can come back in for the dinner and drinks that have been arranged. A reminder that we will be starting tomorrow at 9 with registration and 9:30 with the technical sessions. It will take place in the same hotel, but it will be at the Longchamp, which is at the rooftop. So please be here on time for tomorrow morning technical sessions. Thank you.